So, it finally happened. The old girl decided enough was enough. After slitting the throat of every IP in her domain and eating their offspring, the entity known as Kathleen Kennedy is stepping down as the head of LucasFilm. Surely that means that the bad times are over now, right? We no longer have to cower in fear of another looming failure like The Acolyte or a movie starring Rey Palpatine. We can now look out at a new horizon for Star Wars and see something of a rebirth for the franchise, right? Right?
Wrong!
Yeah, okay, that's not really gonna happen. Sure, the headmistress might have flown the coop, but she still has a retinue of followers and disciples within Lucasfilm. All of them frothing at the mouth for the next chance to make another flop for Star Wars that will dig the franchise further into obscurity.
I would say arguably the gayest Star Wars, I think, by a considerable margin.
And if you think that someone like Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau will swoop in and save what's left of the Star Wars brand, then let me remind you of amazing projects like The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. These guys have shown that they don't have the creative know-how to truly save Star Wars. Jon Favreau had an okay idea with The Mandalorian, but it quickly played itself out, and Filoni, evidently, should stick to animation. His failures in the live-action genre are proof enough that he doesn't have what it takes to run an entire franchise. There really isn't any obvious successor that could bring Lucasfilm back in a big way, and it's become apparent that the corporate culture at Disney forbids the risk-taking actions that the brand needs right now to make it a true success. The truth is that Star Wars is dead and Kathleen Kennedy killed it. So at this point, whoever takes over is inheriting a rotting corpse instead of the cultural phenomenon that the brand used to be. But hey, let's imagine for a moment that the people who take over do a really good job. Stick with me here, this is best case scenario.
Well, gentlemen, you had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
What could the heads at Lucasfilm do at this point to resurrect Star Wars and make it a respectable franchise once again? Number 1. Burn it all down. Of course, my knee-jerk reaction to this idea is to undo everything that Kathleen Kennedy has put in place. Erase the sequel trilogy and kill all of the TV shows and start again. Stop making anything that has been greenlit and cancel any project that's in the works. Just stop altogether and wait. Keep quiet for a few years until all of this is blown over and the fans have had time to digest the decade of torture that they have been through. And when everything's cooled off, bring Star Wars back with something new and different. The best chance Star Wars has at this point is to get away from the cancer that Disney has created. Building off of it and trying to rework the story around the horrible mess that The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker created is way too much. The sequels have mangled the plot and lore of Star Wars to the point where it's unrecognizable. The whole thing with Palpatine's Last Order was enough on its own to give everyone a headache, and you can see that the writers are having to do narrative backflips to include the Snoke cloning plotline into all the TV shows. There is no fixing this, and trying to do so is as wise as building a castle on quicksand. I guess you could save Rogue One and Andor, but everything attached to the sequels just needs to go. Number 2. Use existing material. Luckily for Lucasfilm, they don't even have to write new stories themselves. There are endless amounts of books, short stories, comics, video games, and unused projects to pull ideas from. Instead of rehashing the original trilogy with a new skin, make something that has proven to be a fan favorite before. And don't fucking go back to the Skywalker time period. It's been played out. We have had 9 movies covering the story of this family, and we don't need a 10th. Do a different era in the Star Wars lore. God knows that the story is thick with history and information. Maybe something on Darth Bane, or how about the origin of the Sith and Jedi conflicts, for example. There really is no shortage of lore to be inspired by, but to win the audience back, it would be best to leave the Skywalker saga alone for a while. Return of the Jedi ended the story in a pretty conclusive way. The Empire and Sith are gone, the good guys have won, and the galaxy has finally overthrown the evil that has ruled them for so many years. However, the Disney sequels effectively undid this storyline and made it so that the Empire was never really defeated. They just became the First Order. The Sith aren't dead, Palpatine simply cloned himself. It's all so convoluted, and it shows an utter lack of creativity from the creators at Disney. They were afraid to try something new. They wanted to hit that nostalgia button and pump as much cash as they could out of it. When George Lucas made the prequels, they at least had a new feeling and style to it that differed from the original trilogy. Was it good? Well...
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
The bosses would do terrible things to me. Terrible things to me if me going back there.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
Right.
Well, at least it wasn't a soft reboot. Audiences have realized that Hollywood is just attempting to redo older films with new skins, and we are so tired of it. We don't want yet another rendition of A New Hope or The Empire Strikes Back. We want a story that builds on top of the existing world and lore. Something that can take the story in a new direction, instead of going over well-trodden ground. And at this point, what is there to lose? Star Wars has been reduced to a couple failing TV shows and a bunch of canceled movies. They have lost billions of dollars producing trash for the last decade, and while there still are fans, who still support Disney, they are few and far between. No one is rushing home to go watch Goonies in space. Now is the time for change and to bring about a new era of films that can rebuild the Star Wars story into something more coherent. New characters on new planets facing new threats. And for the love of God, don't do another desert planet. We don't need yet another version of Tatooine. Try literally anything else. This is the time to take some risks with some actual creative ideas. The Yuzong Vong, for example, are a race of aliens that have been completely unused by Star Wars at this point. For those of you who are unaware, the Yuzong Vong are a faction that first appeared in the new Jedi Order book series, and they played a major role in the Star Wars expanded universe. They are a race of fanatical aliens that are from another galaxy, and they are completely outside the Force. The Jedi couldn't sense them or use their Jedi mind tricks on them. They use biotech instead of the traditional mechanical factions we see in universe, and they were a complete break from the Star Wars formula. The Vong worked in the expanded universe because it brought a change in the dynamic of Star Wars, and they would still be a perfect direction to take the franchise now. Not only would this be a new and interesting threat to add to the story, but it could also help to bypass the baggage of the Skywalker storyline. Now, of course, this is just an idea, and it's not one that Star Wars would have to go with, but it's the kind of direction that the franchise needs to start going in order to spice up the series. Number 3. Listen to the fans. Something that the heads of Disney have failed to do is actually listen to the fan base. For all their attempts to bait the audience with cheap moments like the young Luke Skywalker or the odd Darth Maul cameo, they never really committed to anything that the audience actually wanted. Nobody was asking for a young Han Solo movie or a Boba Fett TV show starring an overweight Tamira Morrison. With every given opportunity, Kathleen Kennedy and her lackeys would spit in the faces of the fans and try their best not only to ignore them, but to also gut every beloved character in the franchise. So something that the heads of Lucasfilm could do is actually check in on what the diehard fans have been asking for. They only need to get their PR team to watch some of the thousands of YouTube videos made by guys like Star Wars Theory or Stupendous Wave and see what attracts the fans. These guys have millions of subscribers and create a lot of content supporting the Star Wars brand. So trying to appeal to these people and their followers wouldn't be a terrible idea. These are the kinds of guys who keep the fan base alive even when their beloved brand completely stabs them in the back.
It has been proved to power keep an eye out for these silly races, and now they use it to describe anything they threaten by.
The point being that Star Wars has the fortune of having a fan base that seems to also be a fountain of creativity that they can pull from. So to summarize, there really is a way for Lucasfilm to actually make a comeback. They would just need to grow some balls and make the necessary decisions. Will they do that? Fuck no. Will they continue to fail? Most likely. Until they get rid of the horde of blue-haired ghouls that run the Enterprise, there won't be any of these much-needed changes.
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
In my opinion, the best thing that we can do as the audience to save Star Wars is to stop watching. Don't buy Disney Plus, don't give in to their shitty films or their bad TV shows. Let their memory fade away and pretend it was all just a bad dream. The same way I do with my camping trips with Scoutmaster Connor. It's best to just push these things deep down in your subconscious until they come out in the form of a mediocre YouTube video. So anyway, thanks for sticking around this long. And if you were thinking of donating to a charity today, consider a more urgent crisis. Me, a victim of Disney's ongoing war on creativity. So hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next video.
Endless options. We're right in the midst of starting to talk about where it's all going. It's pretty exciting.
Get the fuck out of here. You're done.